In this video, we're going to be talking about 9.1 Feral Druid and basically the major changes to it and what I think is going to happen to Feral, what comps we're going to be able to play, and all that good stuff. But before we start, I just want to say that this is going to be an assumption type of video, or just like a theory craft video, if you want to call it that. Basically, this information isn't going to be set in stone. Whatever I say here isn't going to be, or probably won't be 100% next patch, because the meta can change. People figure out different things as they actually play the version of the game, so gotta keep that in mind. But if you just want to know just like a little bit of information, if you're on the ropes of playing Feral 9.1 and want to start it now so you can get ready for 9.1, I think this is a good video to just base it off that, because I know a lot of people are on the ropes of playing Feral Druid. They don't really know if they should start it and if they're really strong. So yeah, right now I think Ferals are really strong in 9.0.5 alone, regardless of the 9.1 changes, simply because if you're a Necrolord, you have a lot of damage and defense at your disposal. A quick rundown of how I think Necrolord Feral is right now is, I think it is the most forgiving Covenant defensively. You have, if you play the first Soulbind guy, you have Ooze Frictionless Coating, which is a 50, not a 50% shield, but a shield at 50% you get, which saves you a lot of the time. You add in Fleshcraft plus BM, Strength of the Wild Honor Talent, and Earthsign Vigor in the opener. You have a really huge shield every 2 minutes, and it is absurd how big the shield is. Basically, you pop it, you're fine, you're not going to die for like a while if you get the full shield off. And it's easy to get off too, because you can just bait kicks and whatnot. So defensively, Necrolord, you're looking really good. Offensively, you're looking pretty good too. If you don't have to worry a lot about being defensive as a Feral Druid, and I don't think you really have to that much anymore, because you have this Conduit and all the other Feral Druid stuff, Survival Toolkit, which is Frenzy Regen, Guardian Affinity, etc. You don't have to worry about being defensive a lot of the time. You can just sit there and let your passives work for you and just pump the damage, right? If you don't have to be scared all the time, you're just able to just pump damage and produce a lot of pressure. And for this reason, most of the time people don't go Ferals anymore, because they know, or they think that it's a waste of time going Ferals, because they have to go through so much to kill a Feral. And sometimes you barely kill a Feral. If you don't get a perfect setup on a Feral Druid, and if the Feral Druid doesn't mess up defensively just by like a little bit, they will survive 90% of the time. It is really hard to kill a Feral Druid right now. And you don't have to be God's gift at surviving to live as a Feral. So 9.0.5 Feral Druid as a Necrolord, you're probably the best melee. 9.1, we're going to be getting, the biggest change is we're going to be getting this MS right here called Wicked Claws, and it is basically a 10% debuff that stacks up 2 times that gives you Immortal Strike. And what Immortal Strike is, it is a healing debuff which reduces healing on the target by a certain percent. Warriors have this, monks have this, rogues have this, and hunters have it. All those classes do consistent pressure, and add in an MS, it just amplifies that effect. It's going to be probably the same thing for Feral. There's a lot of consistent pressure. Add the MS, can amplify that effect of all the pressure you're going to be producing. It also is a 40% slow, which is pretty wild. 40% slow is a lot, so you'll be able to kite some melees, some enemies a bit harder. This is a disease, so it can get dispelled by monks, priests, paladins, and also is slow, so it can freedomed off or shifted by other druids, so you got to think about that. It is now a 12-second duration. I know before this used to be a 25% debuff at 8 seconds. Since it's a recent change, it is now a 12-second duration with a 20% max debuff. And how you apply this is you go to your target and you just basically rake and rip. These are the only 2 ways to apply it. And if it's about to fall off, just rake or rip for it to be refreshed. And that alone is probably the biggest change for Feral in 9.1. Not for the reason you think, it's also for the reason that you're probably going to be able to play more comps. I think the biggest thing about playing comps that are not Jungle Cleave and Feral Warrior, or one of the biggest things, is that you don't have a Mortal Strike effect, so you're not really able to just dampen a bunch as those comps, as other comps prior to Jungle or Feral Warrior. And having an MS will allow you to play more comps with casters such as mages, shadow priests, and warlocks. Shadow priests, warlocks can produce a lot of consistent pressure, and mages can produce a lot of burst and also consistent pressure as well. So having an MS with those classes just make it so much more powerful and very volatile. So if you're someone who doesn't really like to play cleaves like jungle or feral warrior, I think having this MS 9.1 will open you up to more comps. And I know a lot of people don't really like playing melee cleaves like that. They prefer setup comps like the comps I mentioned, feral caster. So that's something to look out for. And as well, you're able to probably play more feral melee comps too that didn't have MS. So DKs, Rets, Enhanced Shamans, Demon Hunters, you can probably play with those and do pretty decent with it. You can now fill in the gap with having a Mortal Strike yourself. Usually those classes would always play with a Warrior because they did a lot of consistent pressure, and they had also Mortal Strike, which complements comps, or complements melee comps like that, where again they're just pumping out that damage. You're gonna be able to bring this to the table now, and maybe a lot of classes would probably want to play with Ferals, so that's a really good thing about having this honor talent. The sucky thing is though, it's gonna take up another slot, which kind of sucks, because how it was in, or how it is in 9.0.5 right now is you basically had Leader of the Pack, Strength of Wild, and this third slot, whatever it may be, would always be a switch out slot, a flexible slot, where you could switch out Thorns, Savage Momentum, or Ferocious Wound. This is also speaking from a Necrolar perspective. If you're a Kieran or Knife, you probably will always have these three, and you might want to switch out this last talent. But seeing as how Feral is right now, you definitely need this talent, and this talent is always good to have. But with the new MS, you might want to ditch Leader of the Pack for Wicked Claws. I think this alone is worth taking over Leader of the Pack, which sucks. But then you could also just run Leader of the Pack here and just keep that in the third, which is completely up to you. I think though, this is assuming that you're playing comps that don't have a Mortal Strike already. If you're playing a Hunter or Warrior, you probably don't need to worry about this change. You can just play the standard 2 mandatory, and not mandatory, but these 2 picks, and then leave this as your flexible slot. But if you're going to be playing Wicked Claws, I think you probably want to switch out Leader of the Pack for Thorns if you're fighting melee. Caster teams, you can either go Savage Momentum or say Leader if you want. High Winds might be a decent pick, simply because the healing reduction on the target that it leaves after leaving Cyclone. So if you're playing, again, Feral Caster, Feral Mage, where you have long CC chains, slap on a clone at the end of the chain, do a lot of burst, the healer will probably have a hard time keeping up that target, because then they have to deal with this 30% debuff, which kind of sucks for them. So that's also another option. If you also want, you could switch out to Freedom of the Herd, which got changed from the last, I think, patch note or spell changes. It also reduces the cooldown of Stampeding Roar by a minute, which is really nice if you're playing feral melee comps like a Warrior, Windwalker, DH, Enhance, Rets, pretty much any other melee that can get stuck in a root that's not a Druid. This can be a very solid option to get them out of the root and allow you to chase your target more. I could see myself playing this if I'm running at a healer, right? If I'm just going full pedal to the metal and just don't care about anything else but just running at a healer, I think this could be a solid option. If you're going for that all-in strategy, 1 minute Stampeding Roar, pop out that root, keep them fast, keep them unsnared. It's not a immunity to snares and roots, but it'll just get them out at like very crucial situations for just like a little bit. So it can be very useful. Ferocious Wound got nerfed a bit. Before it used to be a 3 stack, now it's a 2 stack, which max out to 10% HP debuff, which kind of sucks. If you're a Necrolord, you don't really have to worry about this because most of the time you don't bite, I think. Or in my opinion, you don't really bite, so you don't have to worry about that change. If you're a Kieran or a Knife, I feel like that change is very huge because Ferocious Biting is a very big portion of your damage, right? And you always are going to be keeping up that stack up because you're going to be biting constantly. So if you're going to be playing those 2 Covenants, you might want to change that out to Wicked Claws or a setup like this. I don't think if I was those covenants, I would probably be more lenient. Not lenient, but I would probably be willing to switch out Ferocious Wind for something else. But yeah, it kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And yeah, I think that's it for the honor talents. I think King of the Pack, not King of the Pack, King of the Jungle also got changed. You can now stack it up with other movement speed abilities, so you can rip and get the stack and also dash. I'm not sure if this worked like this before, but I think now you can stack them up, which is kind of nice to run. I don't think his talent's going to be a big pick though, or a big hitter, so don't really have to worry about that. Dash got a minor change. Instead of Centenary being reduced by 10 seconds, it is dash. All the other things got or remained the same. TF, survival instincts are still the mechanic for this talent. But yeah, those are basically the talents. If I were gonna say what covenant and talent selection I would roll with in 9.1, it would be Necrolord, because if nothing changes from here to then, I feel like Necrolord is still going to be a solid option, and it's probably going to be your safest option. I know Convoke, I'm not a Convoke expert or Knife expert. I know Knife is going to be getting this legendary where it reduces Convoke by a minute, so it's a 1 minute cooldown, which is nice because you don't have to deal with that trinket trade that everyone does whenever they see Convoke. So if you're trying to be a Knife Feral, it might be a good time for you next patch, because having a 1 minute Convoke is really nice. And from what I've heard and seen, you do get a couple of bites with this, so the burst is still there, and now it's a 1 minute cooldown. You might be able to pop off with some nice setups, so it might be a really exciting time to be a Knife Feral. But if you're going for the safest option and the most, I guess, the value and less risk, I feel like Necrolord will be still the pick if nothing gets changed with it, damage wise or survivability wise. So it might just be Necrolord, Night Fae, and Kieran Venthyr in that order. So yeah. And if you're going to be running with the talents, I think you would want to try this setup as a default for Necrolord. I think this one gives pretty much, it covers everything. You still have Leader, you still have Strength of Wild, this mandatory talent, Wicked Claws. You only want to pick like Wicked Claws if you're playing 2v2 and or playing with classes that don't have Immortal Strike itself. So basically, if you're playing with the Warrior, Hunter, Windwalker, Rogue, you don't really need this. But if you're playing with anything else than those classes I just listed, you can play Wicked Claws and maybe do a little setup like this, which can be a good default pick. And if you want to switch out to different talents, maybe you can toss out Thorns for, not Thorns, but Leader of the Pack for Thorns and whatever else you might want to need. So yeah, I think that's about it for Feral. Hopefully that video wasn't too long, and I think I got all my thoughts down. All in all, I think 9.1 is going to shape up to be a really, really exciting patch for Feral Druid. I think it's going to be the patch of the Feral Druid. You're going to be seeing a lot of Feral Druids running around. There's a lot right now at 9.0.5, but I know a lot of people are slowly transitioning into playing Feral. A lot of people that I've seen main other classes have been kind of just popping in streams and whatnot, asking about Feral. So I think it's going to be a cool time if you're a Feral Druid. You're going to be the popular kid on the block, so a lot of people want to queue arena with you. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really good time for Ferals. I highly recommend to start now, because much of the mechanics of Feral Druid right now, you can, if you learn now, it's going to be definitely applicable in 9.1, right? So start now if you're interested, and I hope my video convinced you to play Feral Druid just based off this information alone. If you want to learn how to do more damage and whatnot, and basically learn some of the comps, I have other videos on my channel talking about all that stuff. But yeah, for now guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.